all right, we needed a little break time. Because, I'm like, I'm going to keep this really short. And then 10 minutes later, we're still in the same chapter. So I apologize. I think as I'm reading this, there's stuff that I'm adding in. But most of this is already written down. So, yeah. Continuing with my dad's history. So I talked a little bit about great grandma, his grandma that he was raised by, and kind of how all that situation happened and the animosity between my dad's dad and his grandma. In addition to that, what I know about my dad's personality is that he was a troublemaker as a kid. So he was very boisterous, he was very opinionated, and he got into a lot of fights with other kids and would talk back to adults. There's also stories of him just being very intelligent, very charming, very witty, and like kind of a star athlete. So depending on who you talk to, my dad was either a horrendous brat or a hometown hero. He was very polarizing. If he liked you, he respected you, he treated you well. But if he didn't like you, you would definitely know it. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is my dad was very intelligent. He was very smart. And I think that is also part of why he was so successful in being manipulative, is that he did have that very high intelligence. We'll get more to that later. As a kid, my dad, I think he felt very abandoned. He was not very sympathetic to Grandpa Robert because all he kind of experienced was that his dad wasn't there, right? And that he ended up with his grandma because his dad didn't take care of him, didn't want him, is what he perceived to be the truth. Come to find out years later, one of his siblings ended up tracking down his dad, and that was not the reality. The reality was that he wanted to take the children in, and that actually great grandma would prevent him from being there. He would come to the house and try to see his kids and ask to see his kids, and what his siblings remember was that they would be told to go to the rooms or to go out back or to leave, not knowing that was their dad at the door, right? Because they didn't know who he was. So yeah, I think there's definitely some pieces there where my dad felt abandoned, but I don't think he actually was. And I hope that he was able to rectify that at some point, but I'm not really sure. But I do know he did not grow up with that father figure. We did meet Grandpa Robert on one of the trips to Virginia, and I think that was the first time that my dad actually met him. And I was probably 9 at that point, so my dad was probably well into his 30s before he even met his father. I don't remember Grandpa Robert saying a single word to me. I don't really remember a lot about his personality. He kind of seemed, from what I recall, aloof and withdrawn, but I guess whatever relationship they were able to rectify in that conversation, it was enough that my dad actually went back to my grandpa's funeral when he passed away. So maybe at some point he kind of pieced together what happened there. So my dad was the oldest, and right out of high school, when he graduated, he left Virginia and joined the Navy and went out to travel the world. I'm not sure why he joined the military, like what sparked him, but at that time, for Black man in society, military had really great options and benefits of what it would provide as far as like financial stability, lifestyle, all of that. But I'm not sure why Navy or anything of that sort. I do know that my dad had a really close relationship to great grandma Eva, and he actually really respected her, and his siblings say that he would call and spend hours on the phone talking to her while he was deployed, like best buddies. Which I think will help you understand my dad's personality a little bit later. He really loved, as polarizing as my grandma was and how cruel she was to a lot of people, like he really loved her. As far as like his personality in the military, I don't know what happened. I think probably being in such a strict, rigid system of, you know, order, I'm not sure that my dad was the type of person that respected certain leaders. And so, yeah, something in the Navy shook him. I know he ended up with a drunk driving offense. I know he ended up in some anger management courses. I know that he did really well, though. He ended up being promoted in his position. He was getting special assignments, and got a lot of respect for his ability to repair machines. So polarizing. Somehow he ended up completing his service with an honorable discharge, and he completed his 5 years. But I think there's very polarizing behavior and demeanor, like consistent throughout his history. So as I now shift into my mom and dad together, because they met while my dad was still in the military. My dad was 5 years younger than my mom. So he would have been maybe in his mid-20s, almost 25, 24, 25 when he met my mom. And my mom was probably around 29. So now I'm going to switch into their story together. So I think it's important to understand their histories, where they were both coming from. There was a lot of fragmented family history, a lot of fragmented relationships. And so I think it'll make a lot of sense of what they built together, understanding that history. All right, so next video, I'll see you there.